Welcome everyone to the first Workspace Wednesday of 2024. Unfortunately, we didn't start the recording before Chris and I agreed that I was wise, but I'll use AI to add that bit in later, of course. And these are the updates for the end user. We did the Techie Tuesday ones yesterday. If you haven't had those, then I'll process them today, and you'll get the video and the recording at the end of today at some point, so that's in hand. Same with this one. We'll get the recording done and we'll get them over to you along with the slide deck. So here we go. So I'm very jealous that Charlie from colleague Sergar has already got this functionality, because I was planning to do it this morning, although it wouldn't work for this session because it is limited to 30 minutes. They did have, this is a repost. They mentioned this we mentioned this last time. They've delayed the rollout, and the rollout was due to have been finished by now, but it started on January the 4th. So it might be that you haven't yet got it. And you basically get a 30-minute video record option within Google Slides. The button should appear in the top right-hand corner of a slide deck to allow you to do that. And you get the option like you do with the Google screencast option built into Chrome to have you facing it or not, and so on and so forth. So that's quite a nice little thing. Like I say, it's limited to 30 minutes. Of course, if you've exceeded your storage limit, then of course it will stop before it gets to that. So you're just going to be aware of those kinds of things. But it's there, and then you can just go and find it in your Google Drive afterwards, should you want to do that. So that's quite a nice little thing that you've got that built in to Google Slides now, rather than it being as a separate thing. So you don't necessarily even need to be in a meet to be able to record things now, which is kind of quite handy. So that's the first one. A bit more functionality on iOS devices for Google Sheets. You can now copy and paste a chart from sheet to sheet or from within the same sheet as well. And there's a bit more functionality on the little menus that pop up to allow you to make some more adjustments to the document on an iOS. It's been pretty limited until now, but that's that little, I forgot what the pop-up little window, the pop-up strip of buttons that pops up when you select something in mobile versions of Sheets, and it's got a few more buttons on it now as well. So you've got a little bit more functionality there should you want it. And we mentioned this yesterday, kind of quite handy that as soon as you've selected one on a mobile device, you can now select all. So if you need to do an action for a large group of things, then you can. You can, of course, then individually untick. So if it's 40 of the 50 that you want to delete, for example, you can select all and then just delete the 10 rather than have to individually select all 40. So you can work it in reverse as well. I think so. It's an improved piece of functionality within the mobile version of Gmail, both on Android and iOS. There, but we mentioned that yesterday, so we're going to move on. This one I think is really quite interesting. It's Education Standard and Education Plus. I don't know why they've left off the teaching and learning one, but they have. But until now, you could only say either it's a completely open slide form that anyone can fill out and it's public on the web, or it's restricted to the people I choose to send it to. And you've now got the option to be much more specific and actually say, well, actually this group of people, so your finance team, or only your teaching staff, or only year 7 students, or whoever, are able to access the form. So it's quite nice that you can be that specific. So, if you're using forms for surveys within your student body, for example, then you can be quite specific about who you target, as long as you've got those groups that already exist. Clearly, if the group doesn't exist, then you can't add it in there to allow them to be the group that fills it out. So you've got to, Dave's had enough, he's packing to go home, look. So that's quite nice, I quite like that. I think that excuse me, I think that has huge potential to be really useful, as long as, of course, as you've got the groups in place in the first place. Beta application link on there. And this also is quite nice. And this is kind of Google's AI working in the background again. This works both on the main document and in the. So if you were marking a piece of maths, for example, and you wanted to show the student the solution, you can actually write the solution in the comments bit, and they're actually there. And basically, as soon as you tap the equals sign, it does the calculation for you and gives you the answer. So you type in your maths problem, press equals, and then just tab. So you don't need to go to the mouse, or you don't need to keep typing. And you can see in the example they're given, it's actually quite a long answer to that particular problem. So it kind of saves you, what's that, 7-8 characters you've got to type there rather than just pressing tab. So it's a really nice little piece of additional functionality works both on the main document and in comments, which is quite nice. So I quite like that. So that's quite a nice one. Google Chat, I think probably about the middle of last year, I did a slide deck where there were about 30 odd updates, some already that happened and some that were very soon to come on Google Chat. When Google decided they were going to invest a great deal of energy and time in this, we use this hugely. Chat is an enormously powerful tool for us. We use it for ourselves. We use it with other organisations that we support, schools, colleges, and universities and things. So it's really, really useful. And the search results now are getting better. You get the kind of highlighting there. You might not even have noticed it because you get this kind of functionality in other searches in your Gmail and so on and so forth when you've used it before. So you might not notice it wasn't there, but it now is there. So you basically got a new improved search with, of course, the smart chips across the top, so you can search and filter and so on and so forth to get yourself to the place where you want to be, which is really nice. So that's a great little extra piece of additional functionality in Chat. Next one, you can now also mute notifications in Google Chat. No one, please rush off to mute all the notifications you get from me. Be more selective than that. But you can basically, if you're getting inundated or you need to concentrate, I mean, you can always put, do not disturb as a general setting for your whole account, don't forget. But if you want to mute particular ones because it's particularly active and you only want to catch up, when you want to catch up, then you can go and do that now by using the 3 dots. What Google calls the 3 dots, the more button, don't they? Because it kind of appears all over the place. I call it the skinny snowman. But you've got the option, should you choose to mute some other conversation strands in your spaces within Google Chat, which is great. Moving on. We mentioned yesterday about the profile discovery. It does rely on your admin person turning on profile discovery on as an option for you first. But once you have, you can then go in as a user and you can customize how your profile appears to people who do a search for either your email or your mobile phone number, and decide what they see in terms of how the name is shown, whether there's a picture or not. I don't know if I've mentioned it in here, but I'm sure I read, because in the process of preparing these, you can now also do a recording of the pronunciation of your name. It's not on these screen grabs, but I'm sure maybe it's in one of the later slides. I don't know whether I read it or added it in or not. I've just forgotten. But it's available in open beta. So basically, once your admin has turned on this, you can then customize your own profile. And you've been able, it was last month or the month before that they gave you the option to add your own pronouns in. And that's been there for a little while now, but you just get a bit more control over what your profile looks like to the outside world, should you choose to adapt it. Moving on. This is a really nice one. I really like these. I'm going to do a quick demo of these, if that's okay, because there's a few bits in docs that I've already mentioned one about the, the equations. I'm just going to flip across very quickly to a document just so I can demonstrate these, because it's just that share this tab instead. So hopefully you should be able to see this Google Doc. The first one is a placeholder chip. So start to type placeholder, click the one that I want, and as soon as you've added a placeholder, it gives you the 5 options that you can add as a placeholder. So you can decide which one, whether you want to be people, file, date, calendar, or event. So if I chose date, it just gives me the date. Once it's in there, I can then click on it, and I can then select a date that I want. So if you're building a document where someone needs to, oh, we've got to press OK. So you can actually basically customizable placeholders. So I'll go to another one, and I'll use place this time. And again, you can go in there and you just can't type, sorry. Choose the one you want, and it will then give you a little a map to things. So it allows you to create little customizable placeholder chips, they're called, and you got those 5 options. And you'll notice as I was doing that each time you go to a new line, you now get the at menu appear there. And so by clicking on that, it takes you to the drop down automatically. So it just saves you having to right click or to type the at. All you got to do is press enter, and each time you get a new line, wherever there's a new line, at menu option appears, click it, and it just allows you to get in there. So if you're holding your mouse, it's a quicker way to get to somewhere new should you want to. I'm just literally just clicking where there's a new thing. And just very quickly whilst I'm here, was that a bleep for a question?
Yeah, I think it's Andy's got his hand raised. I think, Andy, if you want to chip
in.
Yeah.
No, I'm maybe just having a senior moment. What's the difference between a placeholder chip and a chip?
And the placeholder, the chips are pre-designed. So if we go to date, not to date, date's the wrong one. If I go to today,
yeah,
for example, it just puts today's date in. But the placeholder chips, you have to, if I Google accounts type, which is a placeholder chip. Once I've selected it, it tells me, well, what do you want the thing to be? So I can choose the person, and it will then, once I've chosen that, I click on it, and it only shows me the people. So then, if I built this for you, and I said, like, you need to tell me who's going to be involved, you would then go to it. It just say person. You click on it, and then you would have the person you wanted to be included. Or
so it's
you
like
the
a customizable chip.
Yeah, it's
within a
customizable chip. Yeah, place, document, place, document, calendar, date. What have I lost track of which ones I've said now? I'm going to have to do it again.
Okay, so placeholders have variables in, chips are just a chip.
Yeah. Basically, the chips are preset. You know what they're going to be. People, file, date, calendar event, and place. I think I was repeating myself, but those are the 5 things that you've got to choose. And with other chips, so if I just go to like today, just puts today's date in, and that's not changeable.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is, but it's a different way of doing it. This one expects it's blank, and the person clicks on it to fill it in. So I would add them in, expecting another person to change them rather than me change them.
Okay.
Oh, they've done them all there, haven't they? They've got them all there. Okay, so those are all the new kind of things that are appearing in your documents in terms of. I'm in the wrong slide. I need to go back to the meet.
Can I just ask, do many people use those for, minutes from a meeting and thing? Use the doc that's created within the event, or do people just go and create their own doc and circulate it like old style? I just wondered what the uptake is.
Pretty old style here, to be honest.
Old style.
Yeah. By the time I've explained how to use placeholders, it's easy just to type date and the date, and likewise. I like the idea. I think it's got its place when you need to enforce a certain style of a document, but probably just use a template rather than these smart chips. I like the idea, but not really.
I was going to say a template. If you had a template for meetings for a particular purpose, if you had the date chip and the location chip at the top, the person that's called the meeting would open your template and then set the date and location within it. So rather than having to type those things, they're there ready for them to add in as a prompt to remind them. So I would be building them into my templates to say, don't forget to include the date, don't forget to include who are the people who are involved, and so on and so forth. So it'd be for that kind of thing rather than just sticking them in a separate document. I should have probably done it inside a template. That's how I would be using them, I think.
Yep.
So if you use templates, I think then they come into their own, don't they? I think. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I think what Dave says will just tend to be old style. I think often because people, the senior leadership tend to give the office team their minutes to type up, so they've really got no idea what it was linked to or the event or whatever. So it just tends to be old style, list of attendees and a date and blah 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 blah. I like it, but it's about, I guess, the leverage to switch people on, and it's one of those things that doesn't seem attractive for people, but I like it.
I think it's one of those things that once you've got the hang of it, if there's it's all about workflows, isn't it? There are times when that process would be useful, like I said, for example, in a template. But if you're not building those things for yourself, particularly on a regular basis, then there's not particularly a need, is there? But to pick a date is quicker than to type it, isn't it? It's fewer clicks, and that's the reality of it. So,
It's another example of how there's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? You know, it's one
Yeah.
person is going to want to do it this way, another person is want to
Yeah.
just type, 10/1/24. It's horses for courses.
More
Yeah,
chips and McCain's.
Yeah, it's it's getting into the set of doing it as well, Paul. That shortcut to calendar invites that you showed me like a month or so ago, fantastically useful in that, but I still find myself going in, into the calendar the traditional way and doing it the slightly slower method. So yeah, it is just a case of sometimes thinking about it as well before you do it. But yeah, it's another option, isn't it? It's another option there. I think they're trying to cut down on necessarily on clicks and whatnot. So yeah, it could be some use there. Certainly worth explaining and showing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Moving on. So interactive questions in YouTube have now launched. Clearly admins have got to turn YouTube on, otherwise none of this will work. And you basically get the results for you to see how they've done. So they all come inside your Google Classroom. So you've got the option to do this now. Teaching and learning only and Education Plus. I think we've mentioned this a few times. Limited number of question types at the moment, but we'll see how that pans out, whether they start to add some more. But you've got the options. And as I said, once you've got it done, the student is watching it. When it gets to the question, it pauses. They've got to answer the question before it will move them on. So a nice little additional tool, but teaching and learning and Education Plus only. So you've got to be on one of the paid versions of Google Workspace. My question that Andy's just asked is about, well, when would I use this? My question is about this. And I was trying to think back, and I know it's a long time ago, to my own teaching practice. Was there ever a time when I would excuse a student from a piece of work? And I might give them an extended deadline. I might allow them to spend a week longer if they were off ill or whatever to do it. But I wouldn't ever want to excuse them completely. The example Google gives is if you're doing a kind of a compilation of their year's results, you might want to include the lower marks just to give them skew it towards the better results that they might have had, to give you a better idea what they're capable of rather than what they didn't do so well at. And that I kind of understand. But that's as it may be, it's now there. So if you want to, you can now excuse as an individual student from an assignment.
Paul, Andy's got his hand up.
Yeah, go for it, Andy.
Yeah, it's all right. I was going to wait till he finished. I was going to ask you about the questions in YouTube, but we can come back to that when you finish this little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, so the option to excuse is there. If it was me, I would have preferred the option to extend a deadline for an individual rather than, because you can now stop them returning stuff past a given date, which is great. But I would have liked to have given that as an option to extend it for individuals. I remember years ago I worked for a teacher training organization. The reason they wouldn't go to Google Classroom was because there was no absolute deadline for the coursework that these trainee teachers were completing. And they had that in Moodle, and they also had the option to extend it for individuals within Moodle, but they didn't have that within Google Classroom, and that was the decider for them that said, well, we can't go there until we've got the functionality, and it's still not there many years on, which is a shame. So anyway, you can now excuse individual assignments for a student, so they don't have to complete that, and it doesn't get included in their results. So you get a cleaner idea of what results you want to include in their kind of results history, if you like. So apparently last year it was announced that the HTML version of Gmail is going. HTML version is one that often people with accessibility issues tend to use because a screen reader can cope with it a little bit better. They've been working hard to make the standard view, which is probably the one that most people on the call use, to be more accessible, and that still is the case. They still continue to work on that, and this link now takes you to a guide to help anyone that uses a screen reader to make better use of that Gmail standard view should they want to do it. The HTML Gmail view is going. You can see that from sometime from February onwards. They weren't that precise about the date, but sometime. So if you've got anyone who needs a screen reader, then you might want to be having conversations with them about, let's just make sure that you're happy with the Gmail standard view and that your screen reader gives you what you need in that particular situation, whether it's Chromevox or whatever it is that they're using. So there's that's already there, and the link will take you to that document. This one for me is quite exciting. You can now convert Google Forms into practice sets in Google Classroom. I don't know if you remember that you had an import button. It's been there right from day one, and you could only import from a PDF. So you could go and find a PDF if you had a load of maths questions and highlight multiple bits of a PDF, and that would put them into the practice set, and you could go in there and add your answers and your mark scheme and so on and so forth. You can now do exactly the same with Google Forms, which is great news for those people in your organization who have spent, sometimes years building a huge bank of fantastically built Google Forms that they use every single year. Then they can now just simply import it straight into Google practice sets. And the students then, of course, get all the help that comes with that, the video help, the little tiles that you can now also customize inside practice sets. Teaching and Learning and Education Plus only. So again, the paid versions. I did it when I was preparing this presentation with a multi-section form. So I think it was only 3 sections. It imported all the questions perfectly accurately. That wasn't fine with all the options to complete. There was no problem there. The forms just got imported as a text box at the bottom. So it won't do a multi-section practice set for you. So you haven't got that. If you can have like a differentiated view through a route rather through a Google form, you don't currently have that in a practice set, and it doesn't import the sections from a form into the practice set, but you do still get all the questions, and then you would just have to delete the section headers, which will appear when I did it, they appeared at the bottom of the Google practice set, and they were just as text boxes, and the section headers as the title. So I just deleted those and then moved on. So you don't get the sections, but you do get all the questions, and it automatically makes some suggestions exactly as the practice set works. The rest is the same. We all, I think, are familiar with the rest of it. Okay, and then finally, we mentioned these yesterday, just in case people weren't around yesterday. Phil Bainbridge, who's in the kind of monthly updates group, has very generously sent us a whole load of links of some coding things that he's already done to allow you to do some things in bulk, which if you're into this kind of thing, could be really useful. So each of those links will take you to his blog with all the instructions about how you might do those kinds of things. Really generous of Phil. Thanks again to Phil for doing that. And those are all there and available for you. Last thing then, and we have a couple of innovators on the call today, and hashtag London 19, so on and so forth. If you're not aware of the Innovator Programme, there's kind of 3 kind of PD strands for kind of your kind of high-end teachers, the ones that are going to be training other staff within your organization. There's the trainer, there's the coach, and there's the Innovator Programme. The trainer and the coach are very much focused on kind of you as an organization working to get these people to a standard where they can help others to grow and develop and make better use of technology. And the phrase that they use in the coaching program is impactful technology use, which is a really great idea to think about. It's no good just showing them a whole lot of clever tools if there's no real impact on the learning and teaching that goes on. The Innovator Programme, I think, is a bigger fish. It's about identifying an issue within education that you feel needs a solution and presenting that as a challenge to them and seeing if they take the bait. And if they do take the bait, then you will get invited to attend one of these things. I've only listed the ones where the language is in English, and the Innovator Programme title on this slide will take you to the website where there are other languages available, should you want it in other languages. And the virtual one is exactly what it says. It's online, but there are 3. Amsterdam is probably the most tempting here because it's closest. If you get accepted, payment of all your travel and accommodation is at your own expense. But of course, at Google being Google, once you're on site, you'll get extremely well fed. So food won't be such an issue unless you're traveling. I'm going to ask Dave to say a little bit about what he feels about it, but I'm going to give you my take first. The Innovator Programme was the best PD I have ever had in my very long and illustrious and wise career. It really challenges you to think really carefully, because I came with my problem, yeah, and of course I kind of had half of that solution in my head, even though they don't like you to have that solution. But they made me think and rethink and really knock my problem around to make sure that I'd fully considered all possible options rather than saying, okay, yeah, just get on and do your solution, because it might not necessarily be the best solution. It really was great. The group of people that I met there still are inspirational. That if ever you reach out to them and say, anyone got any ideas about, you get inundated with thoughts and ideas. And these are people at the top of the game. So it's a great group to be in. The larger innovator program, of which I'm guessing there's probably about maybe only 3,000 in the entire world currently, it's not a huge number, and is also an enormously generous and kind and giving group who will feed you as your larger PLN to make you a better person, because every time you reach out to them with a problem, whether it's to do with the innovator program project you're doing or another issue within your organization, they will always jump up to help. So it's a great experience, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Anything you want to add to that, Dave?
I think you're spot on there, Paul. I think the other thing I would say for those of us who aren't teaching staff, it's not a barrier to applying for Innovator. You are very welcome, and bring a fresh perspective. I think the idea of taking that one issue with you is just the starting point. What you're really learning is methodologies with which to attack future issues that you face. Your skill set will improve, but as Paul said, it's about the people and the experience more than anything else. You'll get access to Googlers, people working for Google. You'll get insight into how Google works and into the offices of the city in which you attend, should you be fortunate enough to be accepted, because it is a competitive thing. Speaking as a previous scorer of Innovator applications, if you are thinking of applying, then please read very carefully the instructions, because you have to abide by those instructions. It may change this year, but in previous years you've been asked to submit a 1-minute video, and scorers are told not to judge anything past 1 minute. It's that kind of level of strictness on your applications. So definitely apply for it. It's amazing. It's, second what Paul said in terms of being the best piece of CPD that I've ever experienced. It's opened up a lot of doors. It's led to meeting some amazing people, including Paul. I could have been nasty there, Paul, but I'm not that type of person. Paul's one of
I'll leave that to Chris.
Paul's one of those very inspirational people. We all benefit from Paul's time and knowledge in these calls, and imagine multiplying that by 3,000, as he said, but by probably around about 30 people you'll form a really close bond with when you go through this experience. More than happy to speak to people on an individual basis if they want some guidance in applying, or if they've got any questions around it. But yeah, it's awesome. And of course, Mr. Hope is a fellow innovator as well on the call, and apologies if I'm doing anyone else a disservice, because there may be others on the call, but Steve is the other one who went off to Sweden, I believe, wasn't it, Steve? If he's listening, you're not. Oh, yes,
I am. I am sitting quietly in the background. Yeah, Sweden 19 was mine. So, honest opinion, if traveling, expenses, everything else are something considered, and you don't want to do the out there, then virtual. But if you have the ability to attend face to face, I'd go to face to face. That would be my honest opinion. I think the bonds that I formed at mine and still continue was exceptional. More than happy to support anybody in terms of their application, anything else as Dave said. But yeah, if you think of a particular problem that you'd like the world, Google and yourself to solve, that's the approach first, and then all the other stuff is easy. It's just going through the steps. Think about your problem, not the solution. Never think of the solution. You might not even get it when you go through the process, but always think about the problem that you're trying to solve.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve. So, Andy, you had a question about interactive questions on YouTube.
Yeah, it was just on that one where you put admins enable what? Just YouTube, or
yeah, YouTube's got to be on. I mean, it's just kind of like it was a note in their notes. I thought, oh yeah, that's true. We always assume, everyone's got YouTube turned on, but it won't work if YouTube's not turned on. That was all. Yeah,
it needs to be as an additional service. Yeah.
I don't know if you
I was
mentioned
just checking that there wasn't another little toggle somewhere to enable the the automated AI questions popping out of videos.
Oh, right, yeah. In YouTube interactive questions, it's not AI building them automatically for you. You
Oh, is
got to
it?
write the questions in. No. There are tools out there that will do that, but that's not what Google's does. You write the questions yourself.
Oh, you write the questions. Okay.
Not right now, Andy.
Yeah.
Maybe on the roadmap under non-disclosure that's been recorded. Can't say when, can't say if, can't say if ever, but not right now. Paul, I think it's accurate to say that it's going to be brought to YouTube for education as well. So it's going to be built in rather than just standard YouTube.
Oh yeah, no, it is. You'll see in sorry, I didn't make that clear. In Google Classroom, where you've got YouTube currently as an option to insert a YouTube video, you'll see a new tab will appear, little new label will appear, and that tells you then got, when you click on it, you've got the option to either add a straight YouTube video or to add interactive questions. You get two options.
Right.
And then when you go in there, you just basically pause it, add your question in, move to the next bit, add the next question, and you build all your questions in. It can also be instructions. It doesn't have to be questions. And so particularly for me, there are some loads and loads of brilliant videos of the next music teacher where you've got the score on the screen and the music playing, and it tracks the score as it plays. So you can actually add in a commentary for the students to see what's happening. Theme 1, theme 2, exposition, development, and all kind of the technical terms that you would want the students to know. It could just be a video with your own additional comments built in, which is all quite nice. But you can build in questions as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's one of those other features that I've certainly seen in our school. Post lockdown and COVID, sort of return to traditional teaching methods of handing out bits of paper for kids to fill in with questions on, or even a pre-printed sort of feedback, quick 10 questions that they use with something like read and write to annotate those.
Yeah.
Rather than using some of these tools that are a bit more interactive with kids. So it's been a one step forward, maybe one step back in certain aspects of EdTech use in the classroom. I think about that we've all lost a bit of impetus that we had during COVID, and it's very hard with things like this to translate really good features into how your teaching staff could use this as an everyday feature that would save them time. And what I try and do is work through little workflows of before you had to do this, you had to create your questions, you had to create a quiz, you had to create a form, you had to print them off, you had to hand them out, you had to mark them this way. Whereas the interactive element, you've got an option here, and that cuts out this other element of the workflow. But it's a really interesting but also a difficult discussion to have, to get the pickup and traction of some of these features. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that we made a lot of strides forward. There's been this elasticity from some people of wanting to snap back to where they were before, but I think it's about picking the right tools for the right jobs, isn't it? It's a toolbox that Google provides us with, and part of our role, I think, in kind of championing that is understanding when to suggest which tools to which people, and you've got to know your users, you've got to know the tools, and that's why when we have these sessions and Paul does the work together and James for the technical side does the work together, all the updates for us, it informs us so that we can help other people. I don't think there's any expectation that we would all use all tools, but for us as those people who are kind of leading the use of Google at our schools, knowing what's out there is really useful. And there's things that I've come back to years later and gone, yeah, actually that problem you just brought to me, there's a solution for you.
Yeah,
I'd never used it up until that point. So I get you, Andy. It's that it's sometimes frustrating, and you think there's some brilliant stuff here, and we're just not using it because either the pedagogical approach or the lack of devices or the individuals aren't ready for it. But sometimes it's right thing, right place, right time, right person, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very much the this tool there, like you say, lying in a toolbox, and it's knowing your community of people around you in your school, or who you're with, about who are the movers and shakers, and who are the people that you can suggest things to like that, and they'll pick up and the others will follow. It's all those type of dynamics that are a really important thing of, like you say, picking the bits and pieces out of the hard work that Paul does in showing us these. But on the onus on us to, like you say, remembering those nuggets at times when years later you might retrieve that tool and, you know, have that eureka moment, which is so rewarding.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
just on like Dave and Andy, just in particular on the call today. Obviously, you're extremely passionate about, you know, admin, security, IT side of things, and that. Your thoughts on having somebody like an actual sort of Google lead for the teaching and learning side of things? Do you have that within your organisations, or is it something that you find falls with you to push and promote?
A Google lead for what? Sorry, Chris.
Like the teaching and learning side of things. So, you know, showing the benefits of things like using, you know, forms from a digital perspective rather than from a time saving and whatnot point of view. Would they learn more from or would they accept it more possibly, or do you think that's something that may need some external, you know, sort of help coming in, maybe Paul or somebody like that to offer up suggestions?
I think it's very much, I mean, for example, our school this term, we've got the first 3 or 4 weeks are Christmas internal exams. So the whole focus on the teaching staff at the moment, quite rightly, guiding and supporting students through their, you know, revision and whole process of dealing with a sort of mock external exam and all of that. So it comes back to that Dave said about timing. And understanding the people that you're working with. You know, it wouldn't be appropriate to start talking to our staff now about, you know, questions of YouTube videos in classroom, but there might be a time, and I think it's our role as, you know, IT leaders or IT admins or whatever you want to call us within schools are more and more changing towards that facilitator coaching role, and we've got to find our own paths within our organizations to build up those relationships with our school communities where we're seen as a support and not traditionally IT seen in a poor light, like, oh, you stop me doing that, or you stop me doing that, or you're taking away this, and it's trying to work alongside you, and as Dave said, picking the tools out from the toolbox when it's appropriate. I think there is a time and a place for external, but maybe that's at a different time to these iterative little changes. I don't know. That's my thoughts anyway.
Gary?
Yeah, I just wanted to that role that Chris just sort of mentioned then is my job. I don't do anything with IT, with the admin. I don't touch it. I don't know anything about it. I'm purely this front end bit. And for me, having this now, the biggest thing takeaway for me today from my staff point of view is importing forms into practice sets. That's going to be huge, because whenever we've been doing work around practice sets, that's been their biggest bugbear. People have just said, oh, it's just forms with a little bit extra in it. So, I mean, we have a Google site that we maintain for all of the staff that they've got access to. So I'm teaching this afternoon, but tomorrow I'll be making a quick little video showing people how to import forms into sites, banging it on there as a resource. On the intranet, I'll just put a little note on Google Update, and people can go find it themselves. So that's kind of how our approach is here. So yeah, I don't do any of the admin bits. I'm purely out with the teachers.
I think it works really well to have people from both camps in there. You need to kind of I suspect, Gary, that sometimes you'll have a frustration of not necessarily being in control of turning features on, or hopefully you've got a good relationship with the person who is in charge of that, so you can work together to get the best thing.
We've got one guy that looks after the admin console, and he's great, and we've built that relationship. But you put the nail on the head that I have to go see someone else if there's an issue to get that button clicked or to get that turned on or a group created. So there's pros and cons, I think, and But I think to do all of it as one role would be quite huge.
Yeah, and I think that I've seen examples of schools and trusts where they do have kind of that pedagogical digital lead, and it can be tremendously empowering. I think, like you say, making people aware, that's kind of our role, I think, off the back of this, is making people aware of what's out there, but also knowing how busy teachers are. Sometimes, you know, it's not just enough to say, oh, I've told everybody about that in a newsletter or whatever method we choose to deliver it. It's holding that knowledge and using the tools, and that's sometimes a thing, isn't it? Using it so that when somebody comes to you with that problem, you can say, yeah, there is that thing, I tried it once, didn't really have a use for it at the time, but let's investigate that together now.
We go to team meetings a lot, Tony and I. We book slots. Tony's just walked in, actually. We book slots with each curriculum area, and we make time in their meetings to go and not just tell them about the things, but show them and give them support as well. So
yeah, and ask them what challenges they're facing as well. That's something that I used to do when I was more school based.
Yeah.
Go around each faculty, ask what challenges they're facing, and just make suggestions. Have you thought about maybe using this approach? It can be a really productive way of working that.
Yeah, it builds those relationships. It's
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
One just, you'd probably expect me to say this in my current role. A couple of our organisations that I work with, I do go in and do training for, have actively said that there's also a power to an external voice. And I know that IAG have used me precisely for that reason. I'm not saying anything different to what Gary could say, but the staff perceive a difference. If there's a visitor, yeah, and actually I was in the international school in Basel, and one of the teachers came up and actually said to the in-house Google trainer and innovator, you know, Paul says exactly what you say. He stood there just smiling and says, yeah, no, but you don't listen to me. There is that, you know, the prophet isn't recognized in his own town. And actually there's a strength to getting that external person. I sound like I'm trying to say something like Chris, which I am, of course. So if you need that external voice, you know where we are. And we do a whole load of packages from literally 1 hour slots to, you know, whole kind of training packages over many years for many organizations. And we've been working with IAG Group, with Gary and Tony for many years, and other organizations too. So if you need that help, then do please reach out. We are there. Steve.
I was just going to come in and talk about increasing extra capacity depending on the size and the scale of our organisation. A lot of the work that we will do, obviously, I'll do the top level conversations. So Gary and Tony will work with Paul and other colleagues at C Learning, but I'll do the kind of the top level strategy and the support and the big push and pull. We do that with I think Melissa's on the call. I think we do that. We do that with TCAT and many other organisations. We've got a new member of the team in. We can't officially announce that member of the team as yet, but it'll be coming in the coming weeks, just this side of Bet. And we're putting some new packages in place around support. So 5-tiered packages around support, depending size of scale of organisation, to support with if you are moving on a journey, if you're thinking about your digital strategy, different bits. You are on the call, Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Big up to TCAT, Chris. I didn't see you cheer then. You did. So Chris cheers every time we say TCAT. It's a nervous tick he has. But yeah, we're putting some packages together and we're going to be supporting that. But my first thought is not everybody needs it. Not everybody, depending on the size of the organisation, but also what you set up, like yourself, Dave. But for big college groups and big large organisations, sometimes just an increase in capacity for that individual training, that helpful critical friend or listening ear and support is always a benefit for people who've lived through the journey and support through the journey. So yeah, we'll be pushing all of that message out and we'll be coming soon. And Paul's working on a new tailored package. So it'll be online, synchronous and asynchronous, where for professional development, a group of your team, IT, co-professionals, as I like to call them, those who are outside of the classroom, like Dave and Andy's team. Those people are in classrooms, like Gary and Tony, and all of those individuals, where a group of your staff can be tailored through, either from start when they first join an organisation all the way through. But that will be a year-long programme, and it'll be cost-effective. It's probably the most cost-effective training you'll see on the market. So Paul's working hard. you'll see the pressure marks where I've been pushing down hard on Paul. Easy to see on Paul, Chris he's got a little bit more hair. But yeah, I'll stop talking. But yeah, lots of packages come in and lots of clarification on what we actually offer and how we can support you as an organisation will be coming in the next 3 to 4 weeks, definitely.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Steve. Any other questions about anything at all? Well, if there are none, if James, I presume, James, I can't stop the recording. Would you mind stopping the recording then? Thank you very much. And we'll say thank you very much. Our next session.